Most people don't think of money as something spiritual. It feels practical. Numbers, income, expenses, decisions, nothing more. But what if that's the mistake? What if your financial decisions are not just affecting your wallet, but your direction, your discipline, and the future you're walking into? Because the Bible is clear, money itself is not evil. But how you handle it reveals something deeper. Your priorities, your self-control, your obedience, and whether you realize it or not. Your financial habits are either building your future or quietly working against it. This isn't about fear. This isn't about superstition. This is about patterns, because certain decisions don't just cost you money. They create consequences that follow you for years, sometimes decades. And if you don't recognize them early, you will wake up later in life dealing with outcomes you never intended to create. So today, we're not talking about budgeting tips. We're talking about decisions. Decisions that seem small in the moment but shape everything that comes after. 1. Living beyond your means to maintain an image. This is one of the most common traps, and one of the most damaging. Because it doesn't feel wrong, it feels normal. You want to live well. You want to enjoy your life. You want to look like you're doing okay. So you spend a little more than you should, a little more than you can sustain. And at first, nothing happens. You manage it. You adjust. You tell yourself, I'll figure it out later. But later always comes. And when it does, you realize something uncomfortable. You built a lifestyle that your income cannot support. Now you're not spending freely. You're maintaining pressure. Every month becomes a cycle. Earn, temp, spend, number, cover, repeat. No margin, no breathing room, no peace. It sounds manageable, but it's not sustainable, because when your lifestyle is built on appearance instead of reality, you are not living in freedom. You are living in obligation. An obligation creates stress. You start making decisions not based on wisdom, but based on pressure. You can't say no. You can't slow down. You can't step back, because everything you've built requires constant input to maintain. This is how people become trapped, not through one bad decision, but through consistent overextension. The Bible warns about this kind of pattern, not directly about brands or lifestyles, but about lack of self-control. Because when your desire to appear stable is stronger than your commitment to be stable, you are setting yourself up for long-term damage. So hear this clearly. Do not build a life you have to constantly struggle to maintain. Do not spend to prove something to people who are not responsible for your future, because the image you're trying to protect is not worth the pressure you're creating. 2. Ignoring discipline in small financial habits. This is where most people underestimate the problem. Because it's not dramatic, it's small, daily, repeated, easy to ignore, a little overspending here, a little lack of tracking there, a habit of not paying attention. And because each decision feels minor, you assume it doesn't matter. But that's exactly how patterns form. Not through big mistakes, through small, consistent ones. You don't notice the impact immediately, but over time, it accumulates. Missed opportunities, unnecessary debt, lack of savings, constant financial instability. And you start asking, how did it get to this point? It didn't happen suddenly. It happened gradually, through habits you never corrected. The Bible speaks often about stewardship, about being faithful with little. Why? Because how you handle small things reveals how you will handle larger ones. If you ignore discipline in small areas, you will struggle when the stakes are higher. Because discipline is not something you activate when things get serious. It's something you build when things seem insignificant. So when you avoid tracking your spending, ignore where your money is going, make impulsive decisions regularly, you are not just being careless. You are training yourself to operate without structure. And structure is what creates stability. Without it, you will always feel behind, always catching up, always reacting instead of leading. So do not dismiss small habits. Do not assume they don't matter, because what you do consistently becomes your financial reality. 3. Taking on debt without clear purpose or plan. This is where things become serious, because debt is not just a number. It's a commitment, a long-term one, and many people enter it casually, without thinking it through, without a clear plan, without understanding the weight of what they're agreeing to. It starts small, a purchase, a convenience, an opportunity that feels justified, and you tell yourself, it's manageable. I'll pay it off later. It's not that big of a deal. But debt does not stay small when it's not handled intentionally. It grows quietly, through interest, through time, through neglect. And before you realize it, you are no longer in control. Your future income is already assigned to past decisions. Now your options are limited. You can't move freely. You can't make certain choices. You can't take certain risks because you're tied to obligations you didn't fully consider. This is not about saying all debt is wrong. It's about recognizing when it becomes careless, because there is a difference between strategic decisions and impulsive commitments. And if you take on debt without a clear purpose and a clear plan to handle it, you are not building your future, you are restricting it. So be careful. Not everything you can afford monthly is something you can afford long term, and not every opportunity is worth the obligation it creates, because once you commit, you carry it. And if you're not prepared for that, it will shape your future in ways you didn't intend. By now, you can see the pattern. This is not about money alone. It's about discipline. It's about alignment. It's about whether your decisions today are supporting the future you say you want. Because money doesn't just reveal your situation. It reveals your thinking. And if your thinking is off, your decisions will follow. We've already exposed 3 patterns. Living beyond your means. Ignoring small habits. Taking on careless debt. Now we go deeper, because the next 3 decisions don't just affect your finances, they shape your direction for years. 4. Refusing to plan because you trust things will work out. This sounds spiritual. It sounds calm. It sounds confident. But in many cases, it's not faith. It's avoidance. You don't track, you don't plan, you don't prepare. You just move through life hoping things will somehow align. And when challenges come, you scramble, you react. You adjust under pressure. You try to recover what could have been prevented. This is not trust, because real trust does not reject responsibility. The Bible never teaches passive living. It teaches stewardship, preparation, awareness. There is a difference between trusting God and refusing to plan. One is alignment, the other is neglect. Because planning is not a lack of faith, it is an expression of it. It says, I am taking responsibility for what I've been given. But when you refuse to plan, you are choosing uncertainty. You are choosing instability. You are choosing to deal with problems after they happen instead of preparing before they arrive. And over time, this creates a pattern. You're always reacting, always adjusting, always behind. Not because you lack ability, but because you lack structure. And structure is what gives direction to your resources. Without it, money disappears without purpose. Opportunities pass without action. And your future becomes something you hope for instead of something you build. So do not confuse passivity with peace, and do not call avoidance faith, because if you refuse to plan, you are not trusting your future to God. You are leaving it unprotected. 5. Surrounding yourself with people who normalize poor financial behavior. This is one of the most overlooked influences, because it doesn't feel like a decision. It feels like environment. Your friends, your circle, the people you spend time with. But here's the truth. What is normal around you eventually becomes normal for you. If the people around you spend without thinking, avoid responsibility, dismiss discipline, justify poor decisions, you will feel less urgency to change. Not because you agree, but because you're surrounded by it. And when something is constantly normalized, it loses its weight. You stop seeing it as a problem. You stop questioning it. You start participating in it. This is how influence works. Not through force, but through familiarity. The Bible warns about this clearly. Association shapes direction, not instantly but consistently. So if you are trying to build discipline in an environment that normalizes carelessness, you will struggle. Not because you lack intention, but because your environment is working against your direction. You say you want stability, but you stay connected to patterns that create instability. You say you want growth, but you remain in conversations that reinforce limitation. And over time, that gap becomes visible. You feel stuck. You feel like you're not progressing. But the issue is not always your effort, it's your environment. So be honest. What behaviors are normal around you? What attitudes toward money are constantly reinforced? Because if your environment makes poor decisions feel acceptable, you will eventually accept them. So do not ignore this, because who you are around will shape how you think, and how you think will shape how you handle everything else. 6. Prioritizing immediate comfort over long-term stability. This is the quietest trap, because it doesn't feel wrong. It feels deserved. You work hard. You feel tired. You want relief. So you choose comfort. Now, not later. Spending instead of saving. Relaxing instead of planning. Avoiding difficult decisions in favor of easier ones. And each choice feels justified. Because it's small. Because it's temporary. Because you'll handle it later. But comfort, when consistently prioritized, becomes a pattern. And patterns create outcomes. You don't feel the damage immediately. But over time, you start to see the difference between where you are and where you could have been. Missed opportunities, lack of progress, a constant feeling of being behind. Not because you didn't have potential, but because you consistently chose what felt good now over what would build later. This is where discipline matters most. Because discipline is not about restriction. It's about direction. It allows you to say, I could do this now, but I choose something better for my future. But when you remove that discipline, comfort takes control. And comfort does not build, it maintains. It delays. It keeps you in place. So if you always choose what is easy, you will eventually face what is difficult. But if you choose what is difficult now, you create ease later. That's the trade-off. And most people don't realize it until time has already passed. Now you can see it clearly. Not just isolated mistakes, but a pattern. Living beyond your means. Ignoring small habits. Taking on careless debt. Refusing to plan. Staying in the wrong environment. Choosing comfort over discipline. This is not random behavior. This is a direction. And direction always leads somewhere. The question is not, will this affect your future? The question is, how much will it cost you if it continues? This is where most people stay stuck. They recognize the problem. They feel the pressure. They even admit, I need to change this. But nothing changes because awareness feels like progress. It gives you the sense that you're doing something when in reality, you're still in the same pattern. You think about it. You reflect on it. You promise yourself you'll adjust. But your actions remain the same. And over time, that gap between what you know and what you do becomes your reality. This is how people stay stuck for years, not because they lack knowledge, but because they never move from recognition to execution. So hear this clearly, understanding your financial problems does not fix them. Changing your decisions does. You cannot build a stable future with unstable patterns. This is where honesty matters. Because many people want peace, security, freedom, but they are building with inconsistency, impulsiveness, avoidance, and those two do not align. You cannot expect stability from unstable habits. You cannot expect growth from inconsistent effort. You cannot expect freedom while maintaining patterns that create pressure. It doesn't work that way, because your future is not determined by what you hope for. It is shaped by what you repeat. Daily. Quietly. Consistently. So if your current patterns remain unchanged, your future will reflect them. Not your intentions, not your goals. Your patterns. Stop waiting for a better time. This is one of the most dangerous delays. You tell yourself, I'll start when things calm down. I'll fix this when I make more money. I'll get serious later. But later keeps moving. Because the conditions are never perfect. There is always something, another expense, another distraction, another reason to postpone. And while you wait, time continues. Opportunities pass, habits deepen, consequences grow. This is why delay is costly. Because it allows patterns to become permanent. And once something becomes a pattern, it takes more effort to break, so stop waiting. There is no perfect moment to become disciplined. There is only a decision, and that decision has to be made in the middle of imperfect conditions. You need to interrupt the pattern. Nothing changes until something is interrupted. Not gradually, not passively, intentionally, because patterns continue until they are broken. So if you're serious about changing your future, you need to act, not emotionally, not impulsively, but deliberately. That means cutting unnecessary spending, creating a clear structure for your money, facing your current reality honestly, making decisions based on long-term outcomes, not what feels comfortable now. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, it requires effort. Yes, it forces you to confront things you've been avoiding. But that discomfort is temporary. The consequences of avoiding it are not. This is not about restriction. It's about control. Many people resist discipline because it feels limiting. They think, I don't want to feel restricted. I want to enjoy my life. But here's the truth. Lack of discipline does not create freedom. It creates dependency. You become dependent on income, dependent on circumstances, dependent on constant effort just to maintain your life. That is not freedom. Freedom comes from control. Control over your decisions, control over your habits, control over your money goes. And discipline is what gives you that control. So this is not about removing enjoyment, it's about removing instability. Because when your foundation is stable, you don't lose freedom, you gain it. You are responsible for the direction of your future. No one else can fix this for you. Not your environment, not your background, not your circumstances. They may influence you, but they do not decide for you. You do, through every decision you make, every habit you repeat, every pattern you allow to continue. So stop shifting responsibility. Stop waiting for external change, because your future is being shaped right now by what you choose to do consistently. Final warning, if you ignore this, nothing dramatic will happen overnight. That's what makes it dangerous. It will feel normal, gradual, manageable, until one day you look back and realize you're not where you thought you would be. Not because you didn't have potential, but because your decisions never aligned with your intentions. And by then, it takes more effort to correct what could have been prevented. That's how these patterns work, not loudly, but consistently. Final instruction, so don't complicate this. If a decision creates unnecessary pressure, avoids responsibility, lacks discipline, delays action, reinforces poor patterns, trades long-term stability for short-term comfort, do not continue it. Not occasionally, not just this once. Not because it feels easier. Do not allow it, because your future is not something you fix later. It is something you build now. You don't need more information. You need alignment. And alignment begins with the decisions you stop tolerating today.